Greetings, all! Today, we'll be examining the legendary Psychic type in its base form, Psychic Steel type in its Dusk main form, Psychic Ghost type in its Dawn Wings form, and Psychic Dragon type in its Ultra Necrozma form, Pokemon Necrozma, the Prism Pokémon. A wielder of incredible power through use of light, and the sheer energy that it can obtain and exude from it, Necrozma is a terrifying source of light power that can both bring life to a world and destroy it all the same.
Necrozma has a body that is entirely comprised of a non-living glass-like substance with thin legs and arms with jagged projections on its thin feet and elbows, having massive forearms with 3 claws in each hand, and massive prisms that jut out from the back of its hands, within which it absorbs light from other sources through the palms in its hands. It has a thick, jagged torso and a large prism with a ribbed outer surface that forms the base of its head, from which a massive prism can be seen on the back of its head, as light is projected through the front of its head to form a face made of triangles of multicolored light. In its Dusk main form, the creature takes over the body of a sozo-teki and matches its physical form for the most part, but the main body of the creature turns into a glowing yellow color as the hard parts of Necrozma fuse to its form on its claws, front legs, torso, and face. Its arms still functional as weapons to lash out with, as the face is covered with a core prism that contains its mind and blue light projections that make it possible to see through its host's eyes. In its Dawn Wings form, the creature takes over the body of Lunala and matches its physical form for the most part, but the main body of the creature turns to a glowing blue color as the hard parts of Necrozma fuse with its form on its wingtips, lower body, torso, and head. Its arms still functional as weapons to lash out with, as the face is covered with a core prism that contains its mind and bright red projections that make it possible to see through the host's eyes. Lastly, in its true form, Ultra Necrozma, the beast's body splits apart as the majority of its form becomes an energy construct comprised of ultra light, taking on the form of a massive 4-winged dragon, complete with a massive thick barbed tail. The beast's hard parts form its lower legs, the arms that hold its wings together, its upper torso, and its head, a brilliant red and blue glow emanating from its eyes as its form becomes incredibly majestic and blinding to a literal degree.
While Necrozma's exact birth origins are a mystery even to the people that once worshipped it like a god in the world it came from, its history has been passed down by the inhabitants of Ultra Megalopolis and tells of a tale of a deity damaged by the folly of man.
Thousands of years in the past, Necrozma existed in a much more powerful and deity-like form than the form it is currently seen with today, for at that time it was a whole and complete creature. The light that flowed through and made up a large portion of its body shined brilliantly and brought great power to those that bathed in it. Much like sozo-teki Lunala, the creature possesses the power to concentrate true negative energy in order to generate ultra wormholes through which it can travel. With this power, its light shined into many worlds, transforming the creatures in these worlds and granting power beyond the wildest dreams of many, even being the true source of power behind the Z crystals and totem Pokemon that can be found in this universe. The people of Ultra Megalopolis rejoiced at its presence and brought in tributes to convince it to help power their lands, and in doing so, allow them to advance the technology and society far beyond what would have been possible otherwise, oftentimes paying greater attention to the creature than the natural light that also bathed their world. However, as time went on, the people of the city grew greedy and forced Necrozma to use increasing amounts of energy to advance their lives, straining the creature's power. Eventually, the strain and drain became so great that it damaged the creature, breaking off pieces of it and rendering its form incomplete and reducing it to the state it now takes as a standard form. This placed the creature in an excruciating amount of pain, and without its light, it went on a rampage and absorbed all the natural light in the world in order to keep itself alive at the very least, plunging the world of Ultra Megalopolis into eternal darkness. It then attempted to enter into our world by opening up ultra wormholes across the Alola region. However, in its weakened state, the natives of the Alola region, along with the guardian land spirits, were able to drive the beast back into its world of residence, where the people of the city fought against the creature for generations, only recently managing to contain the creature inside of a capsule at the top of Megalo Tower. However, the container would not last long against the power of the beast, and in a desperate move to find a way to defeat or to capture Necrozma to finally end its rampage, the people of the city sent the Ultra Recon Squad to look for someone in our world that could help contain or otherwise destroy the creature for good. Taking this as an opportunity to redeem herself for the loss of her husband, Lucamine of the Aether Foundation assisted them, providing them with the Beast Ball technology and research assistance, only to double-cross them and attempt to go and capture Necrozma herself, with the help of Guzma, the former leader of Team Skull, for her own pleasure and self-fulfillment. This led to the primary events of the Ultra Crisis, as she failed in her efforts and Necrozma was freed, escaping into our world and absorbing the power of the sozo-teki or Lunala, the exact identity is uncertain due to conflicting reports, and in turn plunging our world temporarily into darkness while getting back enough light to open up more Ultra Wormholes and allow Ultra Beasts to enter into our world as it escaped back towards Ultra Megalopolis. The island Kahutans with the power of the land spirits were able to fight off the invaders, while an anonymous trainer traveled back to Ultra Megalopolis and found the creature there, seemingly having restored its full power, though in truth it was still missing pieces of its body. Not coincidentally, the same stone fragments that power Z-Rings and Z-Power Rings, and was placed in a state of absolute agony by the transformation. Thankfully, the trainer was able to defeat Necrozma even at its full power, and it slipped back into its original damaged state, leaving the legendary Pokemon it had possessed behind as it crashed landed through a portal back into our world. It impacted at Mount Lanakila, but it had fled by the time its initial impact crater was discovered to parts unknown, in turn ending the Ultra Crisis as the light of our world was restored. Necrozma is incredibly bizarre and fascinating in that it does not seem to possess any living tissue within its body at all. It is a physical and energy-based construct, animated by a large prism imbued with a sentient mind of light energy controlled by psychic energy, possessing properties so unique and different from light normally observed in this universe that it goes by a special title, Ultra Light. In its normal state, the entirety of the creature's body cavity, save for its small lower limbs and the tiny wings on its elbows, is comprised of giant prisms, the largest of which being the one contained in its otherwise hollow tail. The passing of light through the exposed slot on the back of Necrozma's tail creates a unique pattern of refracted light that comes out of a small opening at the top of its head structure from its core prism, creating a dazzling display of colors that seems to form a rudimentary face of some sort that glows the brightest when the creature is absorbing life energy, though this could just be a coincidence that refracted colors form a face-like shape. Even the outside of its solid black body shines with a brilliant iridescent sheen in the light due to the outermost layer of its body material possessing diffraction gratings. The entity does not demonstrate the need to eat or breathe, instead being completely powered by light, with the large prism crystals in its hands acting as conduits from which it absorbs and refracts said energy in order to obtain specific wavelengths of life that can then be processed into ultralight, which it uses to sustain itself and animate its body. Without this light to power itself and clean away minor debris that might be covering its prisms, impurities from the atmosphere would begin to build up in it and eventually block out its ability to absorb light, causing its body to darken as it enters into a comatose state. The fact that this creature is able to survive without any form of organic tissue at all, powered by the limited amount of ultralight it can generate in its base state, is not something that is unheard of in the Pokemon world. But what makes the beast interesting is that the crystalline form that its internal prisms possess and the chemical composition do not appear to be possible to generate in the confines of the Earth, cementing its existence as otherworldly in nature. Regardless, this strange form grants the creature access to a number of unique moves as well as a signature ability in its damaged base form. First of all, because the crystalline prisms that form its body are incredibly strong and useful at refracting any and all energy that comes near it, this creature possesses the unique Prism Armor ability, which has the effect of partially dispersing the physical and energy-based forces of super effective attacks and reducing the damage they do by 25%. In terms of offense, this creature has the unique power to use the internal structure of its tail in order to generate powerful projectile attacks and laser beams. For one thing, by focusing energy from its body outward through its core prisms, this creature can generate unstable balls of ultralight that it can then discharge as projectiles that detonate and create geysers of ultralight energy to damage others. This attack, known as the Photon Geyser attack, is a fairly powerful move and can definitely be a serious weapon to look out for, as its damage type depends upon whichever offensive stat on Necrozma is higher at a given moment in time, and thus allows the creature to wield it as both a physical and special attack as needed. This can further be enhanced into its signature Z move when it is in its fully powered and complete form, the Light That Burns the Sky attack, making for an even more ruthless and damaging spectacle with additional attributes in tow. Moreover, as light enters the back of its tail, it comes into contact with the backmost part of the core prism in the creature's tail, which acts as a giant gain medium. The psychic power contained in the ultralight in its body further acts as an energizing mechanism, and the smooth, reflective lining on the inside of its tail acts as a form of optical feedback, completing the trio of required components needed to generate an actual laser from the light that passes through Necrozma. As this laser approaches the front of its core prism, a series of facets and intercrystalline structural anomalies cause the laser to be diffracted into a rainbow of colors that then leave the front of the prism without losing much in the way of intensity, resulting in a dazzling light show of potentially lethal laser blasts. This attack, known as the prismatic laser attack, is incredibly taxing on the creature and forces it to take a turn in order to recharge its energy after its use, but it is slightly more powerful than a hyper beam attack while being more stamina efficient, and is therefore capable of completely and utterly decimating any life form that dares to stand in the way of the attack.
As powerful as Necrozma is even in its damaged state, that is exactly what it is. Damaged, and limited in the level of power it can actually use.
However, the creature has the ability to elevate its light-absorbing powers to a cataclysmic point by latching onto sources of light energy and absorbing them completely. With this power, it can not only drain the light from entire worlds, but, horrifically, even absorb and possess the bodies of light-based organisms. Currently, this is known to allow Necrozma to take on 3 additional forms aside from its base form. The first 2 are the result of the creature targeting 2 specific types of beasts, Solgaleo and Lunala, as they are both beacons of light energy and possess the right energy signatures for Necrozma to take hold of them. In entering these states, Necrozma absorbs the power of these beasts completely, and its body splits into segments and attaches to the body of the host as a glowing field of ultralight energy covers them, effectively merging the 2 entities with Necrozma's sentient mind completely dominating that of the host. When combined with a Solgaleo, either forcefully or through the use of an Ensolarizer, Necrozma enters its Dusk main form, becoming a Psychic Steel-type Pokémon while retaining its normal ability, gaining access to the Sun Steel Strike attack, as well as Solgaleo's signature Z-move, and experiencing an astronomical increase in its base attack stat, a considerable increase in its base defense stat, a moderate increase in its base special defense stat, a slight decrease in its base special attack stat, and a very slight decrease in its base speed stat. This form helps to optimize Necrozma's physical offenses and makes it a ferocious creature, pouncing on enemies and slashing them violently with the claws on its 4 limbs and back. On the other hand, when combined with Lunala, either forcefully or through the use of an Enlunarizer, Necrozma enters its Dawn Wings form, becoming a Psychic Ghost-type Pokémon while retaining its normal ability, gaining access to the Moongeist Beam attack, as well as Lunala's signature Z-move, and experiencing a critical increase in its base special defense stat, a considerable increase in its base special attack stat, a slight increase in its base attack and defense stats, and a very slight decrease in its base speed stat. This form helps to optimize Necrozma's special offenses and makes it a devastating monster to have to face, continuously expelling its energy and grasping foes with its giant claws before ripping them apart with brute force. No matter which of these forms it takes on, it renders it a terrifying force to be reckoned with, and further has access to the highest base stat total out of all Psychic-type Pokémon, tied with Mewtwo, Lugia, Hoopa Unbound, Solgaleo, Lunala, and Calyrex in either of its rider forms.
The last and most powerful form of Necrozma is its true form, Ultra Necrozma. But obtaining this form is not easy for the creature, as its body is not able to normally contain the pure power of this form without being in unbearable agony.
However, there is a special Z crystal known as Ultra Necrozium Z that is said to be a core piece of what the creature lost so many years ago that turned it into the husk it now normally lives as. While it is unable to process the ultralight energy in its body efficiently enough to take full advantage of its power in its normal state, if it is in either of its fused forms, it can use the Z Crystal to temporarily repair the damage done to its body, and in turn, it can fully absorb its host and activate Ultra Burst. This resembles Mega Evolution in its function and essentially splits the hard piece of its body into fragments as the ultralight from within bursts outwards and connects its hard parts to form the massive draconic creature that is its true form. In this state, Necrozma is able to harness its unique power to the absolute fullest, taking on its original type assignment as a Psychic Dragon-type Pokémon, gaining access to the devastating Neuroforce ability as a result of this connection, binding its core prism to the rest of its body, retaining many of the same moves and powers possessed by its previous forms, and experiencing, relative to its base form, a cataclysmic increase in its base attack stat, an astronomical increase in its base speed stat, a critical increase in its base special attack stat, a slight increase in its base special defense stat, and only a slight decrease in its base defense stat due to the hard parts being scattered amongst its frame. Firing devastating laser beams and other projectiles from its body, this is Necrozma at full power, and while it may lack the sturdy defenses of its fused forms, due to its body mostly being made of ultralight energy, it is a being more powerful than almost any other Pokemon known, even surpassing the supposed power of Arceus. This is reflected very much in its base stats, as while Necrozma in its base form has all above average stats for fully evolved Psychic-type Pokemon, and its fused forms are only partially weak in base speed as a fully evolved Psychic-type Pokemon in its Dusk main form, and a fully evolved Psychic and Ghost-type in its Dawn Wings form, its true form only has below average base HP defense and special defense stats for a fully evolved Dragon-type Pokemon. As such, it is a nigh unstoppable force that very few have ever been able to fully subdue, and while it is unlikely that Necrozma will be able to return to the state on a frequent basis, for the few times that it can, there is very little on Earth or in the worlds connected to the Ultra Space capable of resisting the overwhelming and blinding power it can bring to the battlefield.
Despite all of its power, and looking at its overall behavior, Necrozma is clearly a tortured beast, as the lack of ultralight flowing through it in its base state makes it inherently vicious and highly volatile.
In this state, the creature may look placid from afar, but it has been clearly observed to clutch its body in pain and even hit itself like a small child trying to pound out a headache, clearly showing the agony that it is under on a constant basis. It is believed that this pain is directly due to the lack of energy being directed towards its main prism, causing the psychic energy in it to fluctuate and change energy levels erratically, lending to its volatile nature. As a result, this monster will viciously swing at and attack anything that dares to even get close to it, no matter how weak or innocent they may be. This should not be held against the creature, however, since it has endured this torture for millennia and likely has no way to contain its agony. When it is in either of its few states, the increased flow of ultralight through its body stabilizes the pain somewhat, but it generally becomes more ferocious and impossible to control, utilizing the power of its host to the utmost. However, it cannot usually hold this form for long without the aid of the End-Solarizer or End-Lunarizer devices, as they help to simulate the broken pieces of Necrozma that it needs in order to live in this state without facing excruciating pain. Likewise, it is put into a state of crippling agony and fury when it is normally in its true form, as its broken body isn't meant to be able to contain that power anymore. It is only with the aid of the associated Z crystal that it can partially restore its broken body and use its full power for a time free of pain. Thankfully, as long as Necrozma has what it needs to enter a new form without feeling pain, it is a fairly docile and obedient creature that wishes no harm to others, its thirst for light quenched. As a result, though it may inherently be the most dangerous and powerful of the Ultra Beasts, it is still a being with a heart, and will show its better side if one can find a way to at least temporarily end the torment it is otherwise constantly under.
You know, well, it might be easy for some to look at this creature in its base state and just see a terrifying monster whose physical form is both impossible to understand and yet coherent enough to understand how its power functions, seeing it as an anomaly that must be stopped from rampaging. But in truth, despite its seemingly monstrous form, Necrozma is a thinking being just like you or me, and its story is more one of tragedy than fear, in my opinion. This beast once had a majestic true form that allowed it to spread ultralight across the multiverse, and it does seem likely that this might have had some sort of positive influence on how life on Earth developed. But because of the greed of one civilization, it was irreparably broken, and now it lives in a state of constant pain and agony that seemingly can never escape. Yes, it is true that this pain can be abated by using its light-absorbing powers to literally take over the bodies of beings of light, namely Solkaleo and Lunala, and even removed completely to some degree if it is given the tools to assume its true form once again, at least for a short time. But this doesn't take away from the agony it must be in. I can't fathom how horrible life has been for this creature over the span of hundreds, if not thousands of years like this, and I really can't blame it for lashing out as it has, both in ancient and modern times. I really don't know where this creature is right now, but at the very least, I can only hope that maybe in some way it has made a friend in its time here on our Earth, someone that understands its pain, and maybe in time it will come to forgive those that hurt it, or at the very least, stop its rampaging and simply try to find the will to move and live again.
With the power of light on its side in the most extreme form imaginable, Necrozma is a dazzling but troubled being whose power over ultralight more than makes it a dire threat to anyone that tries to get in its way. While the forms it takes on all have their own special attributes and help it to assume a more complete form in some way, it can be said that the broken state of its form is still one deserving of pity even with all the power it can seemingly wield.
Just do yourself a favor, and if you ever come face to face with this entity, pray that it does not have any source of light to truly fuse with. Otherwise, the power it has to transform light into something much more might prove to be more than just overwhelming, especially if it can assume its true form and literally unleash the power of a light that can burn even the sun.
Thank you all for watching this video. It always brings me great joy to see others enjoying the work I do to try and make the world of Pokemon and the fascinating creatures that lay inside of it feel as real as they possibly can. If you really enjoy my work, please feel free to leave a comment and subscribe, as I always do my best to respond to any and all comments that are left on my videos. In addition, if you wish to learn more about my work and help support it, you can find links to my Patreon page, as well as email and other contact information to my work on DeviantArt in the video description down below. Furthermore, you can find a link to my Discord server there as well if you'd like to get a first glimpse at what videos are coming up next and converse with other fans of the world of Pokemon. Thank you for taking the time to watch this, and have a wonderful rest of your day.